Ah, hello. Who are you?
Mateo. Golden
Mateo. And Mateo, what is your definition of sexuality?
Sexuality. My definition of sexuality. Such a big question. I think at the base, what we talk about when we're talking about sexuality is that there is something in you that I don't have within myself, that I can't access within the confines of my own being. Maybe it's, at a more esoteric perspective, maybe it's just you see things in a different way. And coming together in a way that brings out these multiple perspectives allows us to see the world in a brighter, more colorful way. That's sexual to me. Maybe it's something as simple as, you have certain physical parts that I don't have, and bringing them together creates pleasure. It creates something new that neither one of us have within ourselves. And that's probably the least esoteric way of looking at it.
So would you say from a young child, from the moment you're born, you're sexual?
Well, sexuality is relational, and it's very much about our relationship with ourself. And children are constantly exploring the world. They're testing themselves against the world. They're testing their theories as they grow and learn, and they're testing the boundaries of others. They're testing their own boundaries, and part of that is exploring the physical senses and the sexual organs. And so it's very natural, I think, for children to express their curiosity about their world in a curiosity about themselves and others. What child hasn't seen another child of the opposite sex and been like, wow, that's different. Like, I don't like that. They have parts that are missing. They have parts that I don't have. And that desire to find what we don't have. And it's not about the physical. It's about I think essence more than anything else. Out of 3.5 billion people that might, be the gender that you associate sexuality with on Earth, how many of those people are you going to find attractive?
Are you able to be sexual, but with not seeing ever, being blind your whole life?
That seems like an obvious question, in that it's pretty easy to imagine a blind person having kids, being sexual.
But where do they get their sexual come from? If they're not able to see ever, if they've never seen another human being or seen something that was opposite of them, where their sexuality, their energy come from?
I think that question is really rooted in the preconceptions of this culture. That American culture in particular is so emphatic about desirability being visual. And this is reinforced 100 times a day, if not 1,000 or 10,000 times a day. Just everywhere you look, magazine covers, in the grocery store, billboard ads, it's absolutely everywhere. It's so ingrained in our culture. And yet the possibilities that are open to us as multidimensional beings, as spiritual beings, is so much farther beyond that. And I think it's a great example. A blind person will often have heightened senses, from what I hear. Maybe the sound of another person's voice would turn them on. Maybe the caress or the scent of a person entering the room would be unique to that person and really arouse their senses.
But is that sensuality and not sexuality?
Well, again, we have to go back to the definition of sexuality, and and different people will define it in different ways.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people, sensuality is the door to sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take sensuality away from sexuality, what you have left is something that is purely energetic. When we talk about the physical senses.
Yeah.
But then you can cut that hair even finer and say that the energetic senses are sensual. I experience that quite a bit. A person can be sensually engaged with me and be all the way across a field, and I can feel their energy exploring my energy field, and I'm exploring their energy field. And I can barely see them, like I can't taste them, I can't touch them, I can't smell them.
Is it them or is it you that's allowing for that energetic connection or desire, or what is it?
Oh, it's always mutual. It's always mutual. I think a lot of people have experiences where there isn't mutual consent in that, but the way that I observe that when I'm looking at energetic interactions is that there's a mutuality based in a person's subconscious behavior, that their energy field has leaks, and there might be a little hole like under the rib cage on the right side where they have like a lot of stored emotional trauma, and it creates this place where energy is constantly leaking out of their energy field. And absolutely anybody who can pick up on that can start feeding on that energy. Of course, a person doesn't want that, but it's there, and it's like putting raw meat in front of a dog. Like, they're just going to go for it. It's as much their habit as anything else.
So how do you heal, or how do you close up those, I call them hot spots, or places where the body has stored trauma, where there's leakage, and you're not able to really run your energy system, your energy sexual body as a whole body? So how can an individual, what are the practices, or what can they do in order to heal and start to close up those leakages?
It's a multi-step process. I would say that the most important step along the process is identifying patterns in our life that transcend individual relationships with one person. If somebody's in an abusive relationship and they leave that relationship, and then the next relationship that they get into is abusive in almost exactly the same ways, there's a pattern there. And if it's one person, maybe that's just them. But if it's 2, 3, 5, 10 people that are reflecting the same pattern again and again and again, then there's something within me that I can take responsibility for. And it's this fundamental shift from saying I am a victim to something outside of myself, to saying, regardless of whatever I've been through in the past, regardless of whatever wrongs have been done to me, right here and right now, I am taking responsibility for creating my future. And when that fundamental shift is made, it's possible to say, well, okay, I am leaking energy and creating opportunities for people. Even though it's not a conscious behavior, I'm creating opportunities for people to engage with me in unhealthy ways.
And so how do you break that cycle or that pattern? Are you able to do it alone?
It's possible to do it alone. It's difficult without a blueprint. People have been working on these things for thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years. And when we're exposed to somebody who has experienced a refined understanding, we absorb a lot of that from them. Just being around them sometimes, without even talking to them, can teach us things at a very subtle level. We're all emanating subtle energies all the time. So I would say that that's the surest and quickest way, is to be around people who have mastered it.
Okay.
But I guess from a deep philosophical perspective, I don't really see that any of us are ever alone, truly. So it's a difficult question for me to answer from that perspective.
I feel the mirror, when we mirror each other in relationship encounters, those are opportunities, like you said, the reflection when somebody has already mastered the ability to, has done the work, I call it, the personal work, the ability to process and shift and what's the word? Mutate, or just create an energetic shift in their body, so they're actually allowing themselves to evolve. Because I feel that we have the ability right now, the human race, for the first time ever, the way I perceive it, is they're able to actually have autonomy to the place where they actually can control their own evolution. I don't know if our consciousness has ever evolved to that place yet, and I feel that we are in that opportunity right now. And it's an opportunity, it's a turning point. Some people call it a turning point. It's the ability of self-awareness is really where we are. So our sexuality, self-aware of our sexuality and our patterns. And that's the bigger work that I want to do, is how do we build conscious awareness of our relational patterns and our sexuality to a point where we are no longer being a victim. How do we step away from that?
Yeah. It all comes down to self-knowledge, that we have to be willing to witness ourselves. And sometimes that's the most scary thing in the world. There are people who would fly a fighter jet upside down at 800 miles an hour, 20 feet off the ground in the pouring rain, and not blink. They would just go for it and do that. And they might not be able to honestly look at themselves and say, I am creating this mess that I'm in relation.
So pulling in the reins, the individuation that we talked about before the interview. As individuals, we all have our own ability to self-regulate. I know now, we know with science that we have the ability with our mind to control our heart rate, our heartbeat, regulate our own blood pressure. So and those are just it's the first doorway into really how much we have control over ourselves and our future. If that's a way, possibility, or is there, so how much control do we have? How much choice do we have as individuals to self-evolve, to let go of old patterns and conditionings and things that have allowed us to maintain on what we call the hamster wheel, or in a place where we become robotic or puppets to a larger mechanism, larger system that wants to regulate and control our behavior? How do we actually really fine-tune our free will, our ability to self-evolve?
You said something earlier about evolution, and that we're at a turning point where there's more conscious evolution happening than in any other point in history. And I think the argument could be made that the opportunity for that evolution has been around. It's been here, it's been available to us. And that in the past, people who took advantage of that would often be regarded as sages, as saints, as prophets. And they were obviously very different from everybody else. Either, on the one hand, cast out as crazy, or on the other, put to death as a rebel. Very, very few of them were actually heralded as a potential future for all of humanity in their own time. And, genetically, human beings have, for the most part, not changed all that much in the last couple 100,000 years at least. And our roots go back 2 to 4 million years in terms of actually coming into something that could be recognized as human-like, as different from chimps, as different from apes.
Human-like. Mm-hmm.
So the opportunities have been there, but perhaps we haven't had the consciousness to see the opportunity. We haven't had the eyes to witness. And I think that's really the fundamental thing. We all have so many opportunities around us every day. It could be that talking to that person next to us on the subway would be the conversation that would unlock our career and take it in a whole different direction. It could be that if we got into the second taxi that came up instead of the first one, that we would meet the love of our life and be married for 60 years and have 40 grandchildren. But we don't know those opportunities, generally speaking, until they just like slap us across the face and say, it's right here, right now. Most of us just stumble into them.
Most of it. But if you, I agree with you, but I feel there's the few now, and I feel I'm one of them, that's not the case so much.
Right.
And it's because we have what I call the ever-knowing eyes, or the owl eyes. And it's the eyes that go through the veil of illusion that can actually perceive and be aware of something greater beyond us, but also that's not so in this physical 3D reality. And a lot of it, I feel, it's just the suppression of what I call the feminine attributes. And the feminine way is a way of knowing that is beyond the obvious to the eyes, that in this physical 3D reality. It's that intuition, it's that instinct, that gut instinct. There's no reason. People will be like, you're crazy, why are you going to do that? But you know, and there's nothing will stop you because you know. And I know when that taxi pulls up, it'll be like, no, this is not the one. I'm gonna wait for the next one, because the last 10 years of my life I would not be here, I would not survive if it wasn't for that awareness. And that awareness is really powerful. In Sanskrit they call it bodhi, B-O-D-H-I, or I call it your booty mind, which is your higher mind. It's the mind, that subtle mind that knows beyond basic physical reality and knowledge that's been imprinted, but it's something more cosmic, more universal, more beyond me. This is not about me anymore. I think we've moved, because there's so many of us as humans in this human physical incarnation, that it's the eyes, the individual, but we're working with the we more, because we have to. Because I don't think the human will, this reality, we're not going to survive if we don't go beyond the we. So sexuality is about the we, because you think about it, people will the idea of procreation, the idea that the ability that we can't. I had a choice. I could have created a life, really, if I wanted to. I had 2 opportunities, and I had 2 abortions because I chose not to, because I did not want to create life in this physical incarnation, because the work I want to do is I want to give birth to something bigger that goes beyond just one physical human being. So, but I feel a lot of humanity, a lot of humans, they procreate because it gives them hope. It gives them purpose, because they don't find that inner purpose, that really meaning of life, and they want their child to do better than them, be greater than them, because their life is not as meaningful. So they want to pass on, or it gives them, purpose. And most people who are now getting pregnant, young girls, it's in poverty. Around the world, the highest numbers of births are in a state of low education, where most people are not educated, and in a state of poverty. Why is that?
Well, you look at that is, I think, more than anything, an expression of personal sovereignty. That from what I understand, the majority of women who have access to contraception will use it consciously. and women who are deprived of education, who are deprived of opportunity, who are deprived of contraception, a lot of times don't actually have choices about their own reproductive health. They don't have choices about whether or not they get pregnant.
Okay, I can agree with that. Education is the key. But if they have education, like for me, for instance, I didn't use birth control and I didn't use condoms for 18 years because I knew my cycle. I knew my ability when I was working with tracking my own body system. So fertility awareness method is a tool that I use to empower myself to know my own fertility. I didn't have to use drugs and I didn't have to use latex. But that was me because I self-educated. But every woman has that opportunity, but if they don't have the knowledge, it's not prevalent, it's very challenging.
Well, every woman has a body with a natural intelligence.
And I did ask, and Mike taught me, and I didn't have to use books.
Yeah.
So I do feel we have the ability to choose to create light or not. Sometimes it's forced upon us, but it's that ability of choice. We go back to choice.
Well, we're getting into some very slippery territory here. And I realize that a lot of people would be triggered in hearing that, oh, you've always had a choice, when it didn't appear that way in the moment.
And that's where it's go back, yeah.
And I think it's very important to establish a baseline of compassion in whatever we do. That you know, it's not easy being human, period. That it always presents challenges. The highest saints and masters and wisdom keepers of any age have come up against difficulties in their life. So, you know, if these are the purest, most spiritual beings on earth, like, I think the rest of us can expect to have those as well. And it's an opportunity. No one can force us to look at the difficulties that we've endured as human beings living in this three-dimensional world as opportunity for spiritual growth. From my perspective, that's always there. That opportunity is always there. What's missing a lot of times is either an awareness that opportunity is there, or a willingness to see, like, even if it's seen, a willingness to pursue that opportunity might not be there for one reason or another.
Okay, so to close this up, let's think about what has been spoken. And I like the idea of your willingness. And that's where we kind of go to the opportunity. Is it self-will? Is it free will? Is it consciousness? Is it, choice? I mean, all these things. What is it? What creates, what births and catalyzes that willingness to self-evolve? And with that, one other thing we're going to close up, the other major thing you just said at the end was spirituality. The fact that I feel sexual energy, sexual experience is an opportunity for spiritual awakening, for spiritual evolution. Because we are here in this 3D world to have we're human experience, but within a spiritual frame, how do I say it? We are spiritual creatures. Because that's the mysticism, that is where we go back to. We came here to experience, to learn, to go back to something greater than this. That's what I believe. So in that willingness, in this physical incarnation, how do we birth a spiritual awakening?
I think to really understand that something is possible, we have to witness it. Maybe it's an inner witnessing, or we're witnessing something outside of ourselves that demonstrates that. And the more people that are demonstrating conscious evolution, an engagement with the inner self, with the heart, that reflects this willingness to move, to let go of the past, to let go of anything that might hold us back from moving into greater unity with the divine, the more people are going to see that that opportunity exists and be able to pursue it. Just like if I see my neighbor is driving a BMW, I'm going to be like, huh, well, we both live in the same neighborhood. I guess I could drive a BMW.
Mm-hmm.
You know, unless I tell myself, I could never drive a BMW. I'm not good enough. I'll never make that kind of money.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
It's the same with spirituality. If I see somebody who's evolved, I say, oh, I could never be that evolved. Like, I like chocolate too much. Like, I mean, this is ridiculous. Totally ridiculous. But it's real. It's a real experience that if we tell ourselves it's not possible, even when we see somebody else very much like us doing it, then within the bubble of our own self-created reality, it's not a possibility until something or someone or something inside of ourselves comes along and pops that bubble. The way that we get there is not nearly as important as our drive to get there, as our inner knowing that we have a need to pursue this oneness with the divine. That without that, there's very little that's going to happen that isn't just happening to us. And it's something that can be cultivated, but we have to understand the value of that, the worth of it. And it's very difficult to understand the worth of it without seeing it in front of us. So exposing ourselves constantly to people who demonstrate the kinds of experiences and insight and spiritual relationship that we want to have in our lives is probably the most important thing.
I agree with that. So sit with that for a second. So with that willingness to self-evolve, to recognize that sexual energy can be a catalyst for a deeper spiritual journey that really provides a richness, a connection to that oneness, to that divine beauty that really is in everything in all of us, but has maybe been forgotten, or that's part of the purpose for being here. And that's the way I imagine what are the fabric into the existence, into more the evolution. So for me, sexuality has been boxed in and framed in a way that has not fully empowered us to really tap into that spiritual essence, that journey, the higher purpose, the mysticism. So when you allow yourself to be sexually free, so sexual freedom is something that is coming strongly to me, and that word freedom has been used to seize and conquer. The United States would not be here if we didn't believe in the word of freedom. And so freedom is a big word. And how do we become free agents to self-evolve that are loving, wholehearted, passionate creatures that can tap and touch the divine through the sexual experience? Because the sexual experience is an opportunity for the spiritual journey to happen.
There's a common misconception that freedom is defined as a complete and total lack of boundaries. We can do absolutely anything. In a very literal sense, perhaps that's true. But if we're going to follow a certain path, the further we go along that path, the more we have to be conscious of our boundaries and use our willpower to enact those boundaries in our life. If I want to know sexuality as a spiritual experience, it's important that I have very good boundaries. It's important that I express those boundaries, not just about physical interaction, but about energetic and intentional interaction. And if I want to be surrounding myself with people who are both sexually liberated and spiritually inclined, there's only so many hours in the day, and there's only so many people we can interact with. And I see a lot of people follow a hedonistic path that allows them to have a wide variety of sexual experiences, and that can be very valuable to them. Once a person comes to a point of desiring a deeper connection, with something interior, not having to have it through another person, but perhaps enjoying the experience of sharing that with another person, then it really becomes a requirement that the people we engage with sexually view it as a sacred experience.
Thank you. Because for me, at first I used the word sacred was a new word for me, and about 15 years ago, beginning of grad school, we created a sacred container for learning, and I found that really intriguing. And what does it mean, a sacred container, and how can spirituality be brought into a learning environment? And what happened was, it just blew me up. Like my bubble, my lack of openness, my lack of connecting to everything around me, because now everything is sacred. But I agree. So I just want to close this up, that I want to just share the sacredness of what we're doing right now. And how important and meaningful it is to me, because this human experience that is a sexual experience for me, because everything is, the fact that I'm alive and I have energy inside means that I am pulsing sexuality. I am vibrating this sexual resonance that can connect to everything. Life, creation is around you in every moment. You just need to tap into that. But if I'm going to tap into that with another human being, that person has to honor me as a sacred vessel to explore and enjoy. The fact that you're here right now in the backyard of a gift. My life is a gift. And I'm constantly being gifted because I want to deepen this experience. So this spiritual journey, where the next place I go is going to be such, it's like beyond, this is already magical. I can't even imagine what the next reality is going to be. It's a little overwhelming. I mean, my heart is beating so fast because I am so excited to be alive right now. So I want to close with you saying a little bit of, just introduce yourself again, because this is going to be, I'm hoping we can share this on YouTube if you're open to it.
Mateo Golden Dragon.
And tell me, what do you hold sacred in your life?
For me, life itself is sacred, and when I say sacred, I mean valuable. It's deeply important to me that I get the maximum experience out of this life, that I grow as much as I possibly can, and honoring that opportunity for every other being, regardless of whether or not I can relate to it. Maybe a rock has the ability to evolve. I honestly don't know. But I witness energy and life pulsing through everything. And the ability, the opportunity for us to have relationship with the divine through this life, that's sacred to me. And it's important to me to find a sacred expression for life in relation with all things and all beings.
So right now, thank you for allowing us to have a sacred expression of dialogue for a deeper meaning of why we are alive in this moment. My name is Onaray. It's my new spiritual shamanic name. Ana, O-N-A, is my female part of me, and Ray is the male part, and it means Onaray of consciousness. And we're having this dialogue to expand our minds and our hearts to what is the sexual dawn of awakening happening right now, because it is a renaissance and it's beautiful. Thank you for listening. If you want to find out more, you can just type in Onaray on Facebook and explore me and all of me. Sweet dreams.